So Jim Barrett from pole has William Antrobus alongside, then Steve Kite and Scott Wright, with Tom Langford and Kamal Kalsi on row number 3. Lee Dendy Sadler and Sam Middleton share the 4th row. Then it's Robert Way and Graham Rumsey at the back of the top 10, ahead of Christopher Ginn and Martin Tolley. 7th row for Jonathan Christie Rundle, ahead of Dan Parran-Smith, who of course was in the wars in the race earlier on today. Then it's Richard Moore and Alistair Dendy, with Alex Jones at the back of the Mark 3 Super Cup grid. The 2 Mark 4s at the back, Zihai Wang and Ben Taylor, definitely worth keeping an eye on, especially the orange number 76 car, as we mentioned, that won the race earlier on. So, a bit of a bruising race earlier on today, and Dan Parran-Smith tangling with Will Antrobus. That was really one of the big talking points at the end of the second race. Contact down at the old hairpin. Parran-Smith had been leading half a lap earlier, got demoted down to 4th in typical MX-5 fashion, and was quite keen to try and regain that lost ground, but unfortunately tangled with Antrobus, who's not had a brilliant weekend, it has to be said. William Antrobus, championship front runner, but he's had no luck. He's been involved in contact in both races that wasn't necessarily his fault, and so he'll be really wanting to take advantage of this front row starting position.
He will, definitely trying to get a good getaway, because he started his first ever Super Cup race back at Snetterton from pole position, so he's well versed to starting from the front. We know how good he is to start as well. So lining up on the grid. I'll be intrigued to see what Steve Kite can do from this elevated position in P3. It's the top 6 have been reversed. So Kamal Kalsi starts in P6. So on the grid, ready to go. This will be another race where Thomas Langford really wants to make the most of where he is in the field, so watch out for him from the 3rd row of the grid. And also keep an eye and invite you to watch Dan Parran-Smith. His is the number 4 car, which is the bright blue car with the orange stripe. That actually is one of the only cars that actually has its headlights still remaining left in, because they tend to take them out for weight saving. But they're all lined up at the back of the grid. So for the 3rd time this weekend, Clapham North MX-5 Super Cup action ready to go.
Yep, 20 minutes of the distance, the final race of the weekend for the Mark 3 MX-5s, and Jim Barrett starting from pole. Is he going to be able to hold on to the lead into Redgate Corner? It's going to be a tough ask, isn't it? The lights go out, away we go, and it is William Antrobus who gets the best of the starts from the outside of row 1. Steve Kite goes with him into 2nd position, and that is Kamal Kalsi sticking his nose to the outside line into Redgate. He will move up to 3rd. Langford didn't get away that well, interestingly, so Tom Langford still only in about 6th position as they round Redgate for the first time and head down through the Craner curves. Antrobus, though, to the front, and that is part 1 of the job done. And what he'd really like to do now is scarper before some of the other quick drivers break through towards the front. He doesn't really want any company in this one if he can help it. Langford there slips to the inside of Jim Barrett, takes 5th position away through the old hairpin, and further back Dan Parran-Smith in the Aidan Hills liveried car, the ex-Aidan Hills car, tries to come through from 14th on the grid. He's picked up a few places already. There is the move made by Kamal Kalsi, so he's up to 2nd already. Good start this from the double race winner, and he's not that far behind the race leader as they head towards Coppice.
Spy spots of rain on the camera at McLean, so if there's going to be any more rain coming around, it might well be starting to consider dropping a little bit. A bit of a sprinkle possibly might be heading out here. Of course, there's no, I don't think I remember correctly, no wet tyres in this championship anymore. It's just single all-weather tyre they use on the Nankang tyres they run in this championship now, compared to the Kumos they still use in Mark 1s. Flicking through the right and then left through the chicane of Donington Park's National Circuit to go through. Parran-Smith trying to get past Jim Barrett, but there was no avenue to get through on the outside line. And it's once again a Hills Motorsport 1-2. Steve Kite maintaining 3rd and the club class lead. Tucked in behind Kalsi, ahead of Scott Wright, who he was battling for the most part. And Scott Wright not standing any more time behind Steve Kite, goes into 3rd as a result up the inside. Parran-Smith now has the move on Barrett, getting the push from his teammate Lee Dendy Sadler. And also, Thomas Langford quite fancies 4th from Steve Kite, also moves the Misty Racing boss down another position. Martin Tolley holding station in 6th, doing a fine job on this 2nd lap. Dan Parran-Smith from 7th, 14th on the grid, up to 7th. And there's Zihai Wang, who, to no one's surprise now, already in a lap and a half, has really got inside the top 10. He really has passed a couple more cars. He was 11th over the line, and actually has now passed 2 more by the time he got to the old hairpin of Rumsey and Dendy Sadler. So already running into 9th position, and the bright orange Mark 4 certainly motoring as we see even more sprinkles of rain on the camera lens at McLean's.
Yeah, definitely sprinkling up there. I've not noticed anything in the first half of the lap though, which is odd because that's the direction from which the weather's coming. So weird that McLean's and Coppice at the moment, it's isolated, isn't it, the rain to that particular end of the track. Here comes Langford for 3rd, and this is an attempt did move into the chicane. Another one being made for the lead, actually. Oh, Kamal Kalsi on the inside of Antrobus, completely sideways. That was very ambitious, and he's really lost himself some momentum now. Langford will actually go from 4th to 2nd, but that was a bizarre one, that from Kamal Kalsi. It's almost as if maybe he was caught out by a bit of moisture on the road, and he's down to 4th, in fact, because Scott Wright has gone through. Although he might now get back up the inside of the red number 88 car. They're side by side through Redgate, and he sort of eases Scott Wright beyond the edge of the track there. So that has changed things around again. It is Antrobus still the leader. It's Langford up to 2nd position. So Tom Langford up 3 positions in the last lap alone. And Kamal Kalsi back down to 3rd position. There goes Dan Parron-Smith, by the way, up to 8th and within touch of the leading group. Don't count Dan out of this one yet.
Definitely not, although he is now, of all people he could follow up the hill to this lead group, it is now Zhihai Wang who's got past him. So he's up into 7th after just 2 laps and already off the tail of his top 6. So again, well, that's just legacy from, well, there's been a bit of rain but it's stopped, or it is still mainly sprinkling with rain up at McLean's. That's where there's seems to be a lot more moisture drops on the camera. And there's Zhihai Wang in car 76. Through the right-hand at Coppice, and onto the back straight they go. Minor stern back towards the chicane. Steve Kite trying to retaliate at Scott Wright as Wang gets a good run. And now down towards the chicane for the lead. Kalsi closing back and under braking, because that was... Well, Langford tried to make a move, but he put Antrobus off under braking. That's now giving him a better exit onto the pit straight, as that's another place gain for the Chinese driver up into 6th position. Now side by side for the lead, and that's a sort of challenge from... mistake from Antrobus has given Langford the incentive he needs to go around the outside. The lead held for the time being, and everyone's stacking up behind him. Here comes that orange Mark 4 behind them. He is still bringing Martin Tolley, who's also got past Dan Parron-Smith. Well, he's stayed ahead of him. And such is the confidence of Zhihai Wang. He's gone up the inside at the Craner curves, past Steve Kite and into 5th. So he's actually getting to the front quicker than he did in race 1, which is quite extraordinary. So he's actually motoring along. We've barely even had 5 minutes. Not even had 5 minutes yet. He's already up into the top 5.
Indeed so. There's Ben Taylor in the 2nd of the Mark 4s, making slightly steadier progress through the order. And in fact might now lose a position to the 45 car heading up the hill. Antrobus slides across in front of Tom Langford. They're 3 abreast, and I don't think Antrobus realised, and that was Kamal Kalsi taking full advantage of that. William Antrobus has been involved in some skirmishes this weekend, has he? And that was nearly another one up at McLean's corner. Here comes Wang to take the lead, probably within the next half a lap or so. He's going to blast up alongside the 2nd place car down the back straight. He's on the outside line into the chicane. He's already got past Langford, in fact, and brings with him, does he, William Antrobus? Maybe. They're side by side for 3rd in the race, but 2nd in the class, still side by side, in fact. And this could now benefit Steve Kite, who's going to get a double slipstream and simply has to decide which side of the road to use. Kamal Kalsi leads, but not for much longer. Zhihai Wang is going to get to the inside into Redgate corner, and in less than 6 minutes he's come from the back of the grid to the front and should now have the pace to get away at the head of the field, although Kalsi, in fairness, coming back at him slightly now as they head down through Hollywood. Settles back in line behind Wang, and actually has bought himself now, Kamal Kalsi, 5 or 6 car lengths advantage over Langford, who is 2nd within that class. There's Scott Wright nipping to the inside of Martin Tolley. In fact, Tolley's done quite well to drag himself onto the back of this group now, more or less. So Wang the leader, and the longer that Kamal Kalsi can stay in the wheel tracks of the Mark 4 car, the further away he might get from the cars with whom he's battling for class position.
Yeah, if he can take full advantage and literally stay in Wang's wheel tracks, there's a good chance you're absolutely right. He will start to pull away, but Langford's obviously a wily character, of course. Kalsi in the 2nd place overall. Antrobus is right there, locked into the rear bumper of Tom Langford. Of course, and now back Parron-Smith, who's pulled himself up into this mix. So he's now ahead of Steve Kite and up into what is now 5th place overall. Kalsi locked in. And interesting enough now, in this point, where before we expect Wang to get away, he didn't have his best exit off the corner as he was hoping, but actually it's backed Kalsi straight into Langford, who now has the run down the pit straight in towards Redgate corner, side by side for the SuperCup Pro lead. And there goes Langford up into 2nd overall, but now here comes the cavalry from Hills Motorsport. He's got both Antrobus and also Dan Parron-Smith locked onto his rear tail. So Langford looks behind him as he's a phalanx of Hill Motorsports cars right on his tail as they swing through the old hairpin once again. Whilst he's defending them, this gives the respite for Wang to escape up the road. There goes Antrobus up the inside to take 2nd in Pro Class. Kalsi will run wide over the curb slightly, but enough momentum to keep Parent Smith at bay, but he might have no choice to attack because Steve Kite is right there, just behind him too. He's by far and away the best of the club class drivers. He's some 4 positions ahead of Jim Barrett, who started on pole originally. He's back to 10th, and then third in that class is Richard Moore, who's back in 14th. But interestingly enough, compared to race 2, he's not getting away as quickly or as far as he had done in the race before. Yes, he got to the front a little sooner, but he's not extending a massive lead here. Langford's trying to go with him and trying to at least negate some of the, it seems, straight line advantage it seems that Wang's Mark IV has, but under brakes at least, and on circuit knowledge, it looks like Langford is certainly doing enough to keep him honest enough through the turns to make this a bit of a proper race.
Yeah, visibly closed in on the leader there as Martin Tolley bounces his way through the gravel trap, loses a few positions as a result. Sam Middleton and Scott Wright go through, and I think Jim Barrett will go past him as well. So bit of a moment there through the gravel as William Antrobus gets sideways turning into Redgate corner. Car really snapping out from underneath him there. Damage to the front of Antrobus's car are spotted as well. Not sure where that's come from. Hopefully not going to slow him down too much. But yeah, Zihai Wang not getting away from Langford. If anything, Langford now looks the quicker of the two, and that's keeping him within slipstreaming range. He doesn't need to overtake Wang, but if he can stay with the Mark IV, that's a free aerodynamic aid down the straights for Langford, and it might just help him keep the rest of the SuperCup cars at arm's length. Dan Parent-Smith also has done really well to drag his way through the order and get in touch with the leaders, because they haven't been able to steal a march on the second group of cars massively. So Dan Parent-Smith, by the time he hit the front, the leaders were all there for him to join in with, so he could yet bounce back from what's been a slightly frustrating day so far. Towards the end of another lap we go then. This will be the 7th lap in the books as we approach half race distance, and yeah, an intriguing situation developing at the front of the field.
It is. Bright orange Mark IV. It's completely unmissable. Now being put under quite a threat from a quartet of blue MX-5 SuperCup Pro Car, 3 of which are in the same team. In actual fact, the fastest lap gets taken 3 times by the top 3 in SuperCup Pro. It's gone to Langford, then Antrobus, and then Kelsey in quick succession, as quick as you like. As we look back to Sam Middleton, who's in the head of that next group of cars, which has got Scott Wright and Alistair Dendy, who's been picking his way through the field. Then you've got Martin Tolley and Jim Barrett, who's the second man in club class. He then decided having a slightly quieter race in this one, back in 11th with Robert Way. As here comes the leading 5 altogether. The orange Mark IV of Wang leading those 4 blue SuperCup Pro Class cars, and Steve Kite in fairly comfortable pace at the moment. And they come through out of the old hairpin and through towards McLean's once again. Dendy again, not the same thing. Martin Tolley has a 5-second time penalty for track limits. He was skipping over the chicane once or twice. So we'll wait and see. And Jim Barrett's having to find more battles here. He's let Dendy Sadler through, and also now has gone through Robert Way to take up another position. So that's now Jim Barrett down to about 12th or 13th position, with Ben Taylor several seconds back, considering he's some 6 seconds off that group, back in 14th position.
Back to the leaders, and Tom Langford, yeah, not able to get away from William Antrobus. In fact, I think he's being held up slightly by Zihai Wang here at the head of the field. And this could now start to really ignite that battle for the SuperCup victory, because Langford is under threat now from William Antrobus, who's not averse to throwing it up the inside, as he demonstrates at Redgate corner. Is he lean on Langford? Maybe a tiny bit, but I think William Antrobus is going to go through here on the run down the hill. Langford will try and stand his ground on the outside line, but the momentum should lie with Antrobus, and it did. Langford didn't then want to leave the door open for Kamal Khalzi, did he? So just slotted back in behind the new class leader. This might now just allow Wang to break the slipstream from this group of cars behind, because I suspect they're going to keep on battling. Langford's going to have another go here at Antrobus heading up the hill. But tough place to overtake in these cars into McLean's corner, especially if the car ahead defends the inside line, which Antrobus did. Slides his way through the corner. William doesn't seem to mind a loose race car, does he? He's quite happy with the rear of that car stepping out from underneath him, more perhaps than anyone else in this group. That's always been one of the challenges of these Mark III cars, as Scott Wright picks up a 5-second track limits penalty. They are quite snappy compared to a Mark I, and actually it's rare to see them driven in this manner, where you're sort of drifting them through the corner. They're almost 3 abreast here. Kamal Khalzi pulls to the outside of Tom Langford and clears in. That was really good stuff from Khalzi. Managed to find a gap in line, just about slotted in between Antrobus and Langford. But as they head back down towards Redgate corner, it could all start to change again as the slipstream takes effect, bunches them all back together. They are now losing ground to Zihuai Wang, which actually is not a bad thing. That slightly adds one less complication to what is already a fairly fierce battle for the class lead. And as Wang gets away, Antrobus can now focus 100% of his attentions on keeping these cars behind him.
Best he can. Of course, he might have to have one eye fixated on trying to catch Zihuai Wang if he can, but of course he'll surely have in the back of his mind the logical part that he's not in this race, but then the race driver part thinks, well, I still want to win, at least outright, so he wants that kind of bragging right at least anyway. You're telling your racing driver not to go after a car that's even an invitation or not to go and pass in position. There's a small part of their brain that wants to ignore that in many cases. Just noticing as well on the front, if this you have, on Antrobus's car where he's got damage, there's something that seems to be dragging on the underside of it as well, where it's just the piece of bodywork that's, you'll just see it there towards the front splitter. But it's not slowing him down because he's still got good pace as he turns his way out of the right-hander at Coppice with Kamal Khalsi in lockstep behind him. And down the back straight towards the chicane they'll go with about just under 6.5 minutes left in this third Super Cup race of the weekend. Turn the way out through the chicane, right and then left and back on the straight, and both Langford and Parham Smith find the edge of the circuit, pushing a little too hard onto the exit of the chicane. And Langford trying to shake off some of the dirt or something that he might have gathered from taking a little excursion off track. But the gap is now 1.2 seconds, and yeah, Wang's pace is not like taking him too far away. He's got a second's gap now, and Antrobus has got a tiny bit of breathing space in front to try and put in a couple of quicker laps to catch him. But at this point in time, Antrobus leads the train.
Smoke from Antrobus's car. That's an engine, isn't it? Smoke from Antrobus's car, and is he dropping oil? Oh no, it might be that bodywork. You know, that bodywork might have just got trapped underneath the right front wheel. That was a really bizarre situation. I thought at first it was engine, but I think it might have been bodywork rubbing on the tyre. And William Antrobus's disastrous weekend is going to end up without a visit to the podium. It's unbelievable how much misfortune he's had this weekend. But William Antrobus is in the gravel. He may well be able to rejoin from there, but of course any chance of winning the race is now gone, and I suspect he's going to have to bring that car to the attention of the team to get the problem fixed. So major drama for Antrobus, and yeah, I do think that might have been to do with that damage he's sustained on the front bodywork.
Well, either way, Antrobus out of the race, and not how he wanted his weekend to round off. He was hoping for a good result, but as you say, without a single podium finish, it's certainly one to have to look back on as a weekend that he would rather forget. And in terms of result-wise, he may well have to. So off the pit straight now, in terms of our Pro Class runners, if we move Zihuai Wang out of the equation, because he is currently the leader by 2.6 seconds in that Mark IV, it is now Kelsey who, in the next 4.5 minutes, if Pirelli stays where he is likely on course to become a hat-trick winner this weekend here at Donington Park, with Langford holding on ahead of Parham Smith in third position. I think maybe the most frustrated, aside from Antrobus, of course, on that side of things, there'll be a couple of frustrated people in the Hills Motorsport camp. Kamal Khalsi won't be one of them. But the other one probably will be Dan Parham Smith, considering that he's been in positions more than once to possibly even get a victory and stay close at one point, and this will be, if he stays where he is, his second Pro Class podium of the weekend. But he'll be in positions where he felt like a win was definitely possible, because it was outstanding for him, and he was hoping to try and get that right. And he was quite quick in testing on Friday. He's going to make it stick in the races that we've had Saturday and Sunday so far. I mean, there's still 3 3/4 minutes to go, so anything could definitely happen. As we see Jim Barrett battling with Martin Tolley over positions, is over 11th place, and Tolley gets a decent run in the approach to Coppice, gets the overlap into the right-hander at Coppice, and makes the move stick to move up into one spot outside the fringes of the top 10.
Yes, he does. Meanwhile, Tom Langford not able to go with Kamal Khalsi here, is he? So it's now really about whether he can hold on to second position. Dan Parham Smith closing in on him, as we get confirmation that William Antrobus is out of the race. Didn't make it back to the pit lane, Will, so I'm not sure if he's still in the gravel down at the Old Hairpin, or whether he's at least been able to pull the car to a place of relative safety. But either way, Antrobus taking no further part in the race, as Martin Tolley builds a gap now over Jim Barrett, who started on pole position, has fallen all the way down to 11th place. Now, yes, I know it was a reversed grid race, but he started on pole because he finished 6th in race 2. It's not like it was a top 12 reversal. So, yeah, maybe fighting some sort of an issue with his car, or just not enjoying the conditions out there at the moment. It is cooler, I think, than it has been at any other point this weekend. And a little bit of moisture in the air from time to time. Perhaps he's not enjoying that so much. Parham Smith, meanwhile, roams in behind Tom Langford as they turn up through Coppice Corner. Martin Tolley, confirmation, gets another 5 seconds added onto his existing track limits time penalty. 10 seconds now to be added onto his race at the end, and that will drop him outside of the top 10 now, unfortunately. The leader, though, Zihuai Wang, comes through to start what will be his penultimate lap of the race. And Kamal Khalzi looks to have done enough at this stage to hold on to the victory in SuperCup. It's all about now this fight for second.
We'll check my lap times. Cowes does a 1:21.8. Yeah, 22 zeros from both Langford and Parron Smith. Parron Smith about half a tenth slower on that time, as Denny Sadler's also out of the race. So another Hills Motorsport car falls by the wayside, so it's not been, aside from Kamal Khalzi, it's not been one of the most luckiest weekends for the majority of the Hills Motorsport squad on that side. But Parron Smith, of course, is on course to pick up another SuperCup Pro Class podium, so not all is bad. He did have the retirement from race 2 after the contact with Sam Middleton up at Redgate corner. There he is, going through the old hairpin, chased by club class leader Steve Kite. And Langford gets a 5-second penalty for track limits. Now, he has been extending once or twice. I'd argue maybe a couple of them wasn't really quite there by choice. I think that one or two of them was right here at Redgate on the exit when he had Andrews leaning on him, which he's allowed to do. But Langford essentially will have to resign himself for, well, will he be third place? Because looking at the gap, how far is he ahead of Middleton? No, he'll be dropped behind him, and possibly even Steve Kite. So they won't lose it. He'll lose 2 Pro Class spots, because if it stays with how it is, he'll drop behind Parron Smith and Middleton, and also behind Kite as well. So it'll put it down to 6th overall and 5th in the Mark III SuperCup ranks. But it'll drop him down to 4th in the Pro Class. That's one to watch out for. He will unfortunately get the message that will make his heart sink as he goes down the pit straight and sees the electronic board on the above the gantry, wherever that may be. On to the last lap of the race we go, and Zihuai Wang with 2.1 seconds in hand in towards Redgate for the final time. It's Kelsey looking on course for a hat-trick. It's going to be at least some salvation for Hills Motorsport, a 1-2, while Antrobus has to lick his wounds and come back next time.
Yeah, a weekend to forget for Will Antrobus, definitely, who's doubling up in Ginetta racing this year in the Ginetta GT Championship, part of the British GT package, and he's been a front runner in that as well for the opening couple of rounds. So he'll be hoping that maybe that is going to see a slight upturn in fortunes when he's next out on track. That will likely come. In fact, no, that will be after the next SuperCup round, I suspect. So, leaders then up towards the top of the track for the last time. And it looks as though we're going to get our second Mark IV overall victory of the weekend. There is Zihuai Wang in the orange number 76 machine, the Paul Sheard machine, which is a couple of seconds clear of Kamal Khalzi at this stage. And Kamal Khalzi likewise going to be on for a pretty comfortable victory in the SuperCup here. This will be his biggest winning margin in that class. By quite some way of the 3 races this weekend. So Wang will come across the line to win overall, and Kamal Khalzi is going to finish second on the road but win in the MX-5 SuperCup, and that is a hat-trick of victories for Kamal, with Dan Parron Smith that registered second in SuperCup because of the penalty for Langford. And in fact, Langford also falls behind Sam Middleton and Alistair Dendy in the end, so that was really costly for Langford, who is registered as 5th in SuperCup, 5th of the pro drivers in that race. Then Steve Kite comes through in 7th. There's the second of the Mark IVs, Ben Taylor. He's going to be 13th at the end of that one. Whilst Martin Tolley retired to the pit lane there at the beginning of the final lap. So Martin Tolley had picked up those 10 seconds of track limits penalties, but in the end had an even bigger delay when he came into the pits to retire. So that's a shame for Tolley, who is not going to be classified a finisher, just waiting for the last couple of cars to come through. The 16 of Richard Moore and the 60 of Jonathan Christie-Rundle. And once they've done so, that will be all of our, well, in the end, just 15 runners through at the end of the race, but they were led home by Zihuai Wang. Kamal Khalzi set the fastest lap on the final lap, interestingly, 21.5, which was a tenth and a half quicker than the previous best set by Zihuai Wang. So Kamal Khalzi just proving a point there at the end of the race, that he had what it took to... he could have beaten Wang if he needed to, but didn't need to in the end, and won the SuperCup part of the race by about 3 seconds by the end of the 20.